My name is David Lorimer, and I'm here with Honorary Member Federico Faggin in our Honorary Members interview series. And I'm going to launch straight in, Federico. It's very nice to see you here. To ask who and what, or who and or what inspired you in your line of work?
Well, inspiration really goes back when I was probably 7 years old, and we had an encyclopedia for young people at that time. I'm talking about right after World War II. And in this encyclopedia, I read about the marvels of radio and Guglielmo Marconi and his inventions and so on. And that really inspired. I didn't know until about it, back. Because Marconi was an inventor. He was not a scientist. He was more an inventor and an entrepreneur. And somehow being myself somebody that likes to work with his hands, build things, and especially when I was a kid, that was impressive for me. So it was really the only one that I can think that had impact. And of course, in life you have from time to time you're taken by special people, but none that was guiding, in a sense, my guiding me from the inside, so to speak.
That's very interesting. And I know that as a teenager, you built a lot of model airplanes. Did that have a sort of shape on your thinking in a practical sense?
Oh, wow, absolutely. I mean, by the time I was 12, I knew exactly what you need to do to invent and build a product. I mean, because I did not buy kits and and assemble the kit. I was designing and making the plans and building and flying my model plane. So I had the entire process from imagination, from thinking about it, from imagining it, for almost enjoying how it would work, and so that was such an important aspect of a model plane for me. It was not just flying them, but putting together pieces that somebody else has done for you. So to me,
And
that
that's
was
very, very interesting. It's almost like when James Hillman talks about what he calls the soul's code. And it's almost as if this was embedded in your system from a very early stage, which of course then prepared you for your later career.
that's likely, but because certainly that had such an impact for me. I never had a problem to go from A to Z. Most people, also in the work environment, they are specialized in a portion of a process to go from invention to realization. For me, it had to be from the beginning to the end, not a piece in the middle, and so and really prompted me to believe in myself and being able to go through the entire process.
Very, very interesting. So this, I think, the second question is maybe quite a difficult one. I'll be interested in your answer, which is what you regard as your most significant contributions.
Well, there are really two significant contributions. The first one is the invention of a new process technology to make circuits, which changed the way we do integrated circuits. And that when I was 26, just arrived in Silicon Valley. But with the experience and what I had learned working, studying in Italy. So it changed the way you make MOS integrated circuits. And right away, we had a technology that would do 5 times the speed of the previous one. You could put twice as many transistors, and the leakage current, which was a major problem, was reduced by at least a factor of 100, which made possible all the pieces that were missing to make a computer on a chip. So we could do dynamic RAM memories that before could not be made. We could do non-volatile memories with this technology, the microprocessor, and CCD. So a bunch of different things that no technology could do in solid state. And that was the technology then that I used to design the first microprocessor at Intel, the Intel 4004. So I see the two as one invention because without the silicon gate technology, the microprocessor would not have happened at that time. It would have happened later for sure, but certainly not at that time. So that is the most important contribution, because also it allowed to change the basic technology from bipolar technology to MOS technology. In '68, when I did this work, the bipolar technology accounted for about 95% of all integrated circuits sold. MOS was a tiny little thing, 5%, and they were not reliable. I mean, they had lots of problems. Well, 20 years later, nearly all integrated circuits, they say 98%, were built with silicon gate technology. And that technology carried the day since a few years ago, when the entire is still MOS technology, but the entire structure of MOS devices had to be changed to go below 10 nanometers.
Yes, that's so fascinating. And I remember reading the story in your book about when you first cracked it and got it to work. And I think you had to work most of the night, and then you got back home and were able to tell your wife that you think it's going to work.
Yeah.
Must have been very exciting.
Yeah, but the other thing that I'm most proud is the first theory on consciousness and free will that Professor Dariano and myself have developed in the last few years. After, on my end, about more than 30 years of work in trying to understand the nature of consciousness. So for me, at the level of what change it may bring, I think this second contribution is the most important, because it changes completely the understanding that we have on nature. Now, with this understanding, quantum physics does not describe the outer world. It actually describes the inner world. The inner world, the inner aspect of the universe, because quantum information now is not representing information. It represents meaning. It represents qualia. It represents what we know from the inside. And that is such a momentous change, but it will take, many, many, many years before science will abandon the mechanistic view of reality.
Yes, I can understand that's very, very fundamental. And of course, people often resist changing their worldviews. It's too much of what they call an ontological shock, which is a phrase that I found recently, which I rather like. And then following on from that, Federico, how do you see the evolution of consciousness studies and the relationship between science and spirituality over the next period?
Well, I think that before this new theory, there was only faint connections between science and spirituality, between science and consciousness. The idea that quantum physics do with consciousness really had been there since the beginning of quantum physics. Schrödinger understood that consciousness was something that was fundamental, and that quantum physics perhaps had something to do with it. But being able to connect the two in the proper way, in a way that then you can do science about consciousness, as opposed to just talk about it, philosophically or spiritually. So now there is, for the first way, to understand that a quantum system, which is in a pure state, has the experience of its own state. And that explains why, for example, quantum information is non-clonable, is non-reproducible, because it represents an inner experience. And so that is it's as simple as finding the solution to the MOS silicon gate technology. It was obvious, but only after you found it. And so this this way now allows the people that are open. Unfortunately, most scientists are not open. They are materialists. Even if they know quantum physics, they consider quantum physics something that is only good for small, for tiny systems, atoms and molecules and so on. But then all this probability and indetermination goes away in the world of macroscopic objects. And so quantum physics is irrelevant, so to speak, at our scale. Well, nothing more different than that could be true. I mean, it's just crazy to think that the particles of which everything is made, which are not really objects, they are state of quantum fields, are irrelevant, and therefore the quantum fields are irrelevant to what happens even at the macroscopic scale, especially since we have instruments that can detect particles, and therefore there is a way to amplify very small signals and make them into macroscopic signals that we can measure. And that's exactly what living systems do. Living systems are quantum and classical systems that allow conscious systems, which are fields, to interact with the classical world that we have in front of us, the world of macroscopic objects. Therefore, the entire conception of what really is going on is that we have a cycles of communication between conscious entities that communicate with each other to know each other, to know themselves. And that appears, the symbols that they use appear as what we call matter. And so we have to reconceptualize completely the story that we tell about ourselves, we tell about reality ourselves, scientifically, which is absolutely based on the basically on materialism and reductionism that quantum physics has abolished. So
indeed,
so it will take many years before there will be a sufficient number within the scientific community that take on these ideas and begin to bring it into everyday's research. I think that the last to move, unfortunately, would be the scientists, because they are so wedded to the principles that have been so successful so far.
Yes, and have you had some significant support for your theory so far? I agree. It's likely to take a long time.
I do have it, David, but they are mostly in the non-physicist quarters. For example, doctors, neuroscientists, sociologists. I mean, people that not to speak about people that are versed in philosophy and the spiritual people, but so. Even engineers, they understand. I think that the people that are rooted in materialism are the physicists, or of course are the ones that have developed all the laws of physics. They have not developed; they have discovered all the laws of physics, and they are the ones that have also given us this view of reality that tells us that we are machines and that consciousness is an epiphenomenon. In other words, is simply it doesn't exist. It's something that accompanies something else, which is physics that actually run the show. And so you think that you made a free will decision when in fact you were only informed by the decision that the brain made for you. So that's the current idea of what consciousness is, and therefore why study has no causality, so forget about it. And that's the mind of today, and it's so rooted that it might take decades before there will be a change there.
Well, it's a bit depressing to think it's going to be decades, but on previous experience, you could be right, but I hope not.
David,
I'm just moving on to
80 years.
Yes,
it took 80 years for the physicists to convince themselves that that entanglement, quantum entanglement, exists. because quantum entanglement is the fundamental difference between classical physics and quantum physics. And so that tells you the resistance about this thing. Einstein himself, did not believe that entanglement existed. So, I mean, this is the situation. 80 years. It took from 1935 until 2014 before all the loopholes were shown to be just loopholes, not valid, and entanglement absolutely exists. And it is something that understands why it exists. Well, it exists because entanglement is what connects from the inside everything. Is the essence of the holism of quantum physics. And the holism means that no one is separate from everything else. We are all interconnected from the inside. And that's what entanglement is.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a profound interpretation of it. And Schrödinger, I think himself, he thought 50 years would be a good period for this revolution to take place. But you're right, it's taken even longer. How do you see the significance of organizations like the network in terms of the sort of scientific field and wider society?
Oh, it's foundational, because it really takes a community to work together toward a new, especially, in situations like this, where we had to make a revolution of the way we think about nature. So there has to be a number of people working together, discussing, exchanging ideas and so on. And so that's the role of SMN, and a role that it does quite well.
Well, one of the things that we're thinking about, and this is Harold Wallach's suggestion, is whether we could arrange a similar series of conferences to the Solvay conferences of the 1920s, but to do with physics and consciousness now, to try and move things ahead. Do you think that would be a good idea? Good. Yes, I think that's something that has promise in it.
Yeah, I think it should be a high level, not more than, I don't know, 40, 50 people, because otherwise it gets too big. And, in fact, even 40 or 50 is pushing it. If you look at the picture of the Solvay conferences in the 30s and, in 40s, there are always, that there are a handful of people. I mean, 30 people probably. That's if I just number them out of memory, but anyway, so yeah, a small number of people would allow this to flourish.
And I think the other series that was happening in the 30s, which is equally important culturally, I think, were the Eranos conferences, which were sort of fronted by Jung and Eliade and other people. They took place in Switzerland over 12 days, and they all sat round a large table.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful idea. Now, I'm coming to the last question, Federico, and this is probably the most challenging one. At least other people have told me that. About what have been your most important lessons from life, both personally and professionally?
Well, if I had not written my autobiography, I would not be able to tell you. But since I thought deeply about that, I think that what happened for me was recognizing that I'm responsible for whatever happens in my life, even when I can say, the fault was somewhere else, even if there is proof that the fault was somewhere else. In other words, that what happened in my life, I have primarily caused myself. And that happened when I was 40, around 40. It happened because I had a problem with my partner in my first company, and that I could not handle. And of course, it was the in my way of understanding, and there were proofs in many ways. It was the aggressor and I was the victim. And it took me, it was the first time that I really thought deeply about it. And I realized that I had a lot to do with it, not by what I did, but by what I did not do. And that really slowly changed my life and allowed me to open up to all kinds of things that before I didn't want to see, because I was protecting the little shadows of my ego that felt superior by being a victim. Ha ha ha. So I mean that stuff, that stuff requires a lot of honesty with oneself. uh, you know, and basically was what opened the gates for me to have my first extraordinary experience of consciousness that allowed me to understand that I'm not separate from the universe, and only went from there. So I think that the sea change happened when I said, I must have done something wrong myself for this to happen.
Thank you
And
very much. I mean, that's a fundamental insight, which I think everybody listening to us will benefit from, and which I certainly recognize myself, because we're very inclined to project the negative onto other people and say we're the good guys and then the bad guys are over there.
yeah, basically we always look the cause of our problems outside of ourselves. I mean, that's natural. I mean, we have been educated that way. We have been conditioned by thinking that way, and so it's always the world doing something to us, and we have very little responsibility, and only when we do something. But what about when we don't do something?
Yes, no, and it
Why
reminds me.
why don't we solve the problem of climate change? Why don't we do something about it?
Indeed. It reminds me of a quote from Earl Nightingale, who said that our attitude to life determines life's attitude towards us.
You bet.
And I think that's a great one. So Federico, thank you very much indeed for your time. And we'll be very much looking forward to reading your new book, featuring it on the network. And hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Bye.